Commander Anya Volkov's quarters aboard the Eternal Harmony were deliberately small, a subtle reminder of humanity's standing within the Confederacy. She sat at her desk, reviewing the casualty reports from New Montana for the third time. The numbers hadn't changed. 4,782 confirmed dead, nearly 1,000 still missing. The colony's primary settlement had been reduced to ash. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission from Earth. Admiral Cheng's weathered face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. "They're not going to do anything, are they?" he asked without preamble. Anya shook her head. The Security Council called it an unfortunate border incident. They've recommended we strengthen our planetary defenses. With what? The same outdated shield technology they've allowed us to purchase at premium rates. Admiral Cheng's voice remained level, but Anya noticed the slight clenching of his jaw, a tell she recognized from their years serving together. "I've submitted another formal request for defensive technology sharing," she said. "I doubt it will yield different results than the previous 17. Cheng nodded slowly. "And Protocol Chimera?" Anya glanced at her door, ensuring it was sealed. "Status unchanged. The network remains dormant. Deployment estimates at 97% as of yesterday. Let's pray we never need it." Cheng's image flickered slightly. "The Council has authorized me to share something with you. Our deep space monitoring station near Ta Sidid detected unusual Vrax fleet movements. We think New Montana wasn't an isolated incident." Anya felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "They're testing our response capabilities. And the Confederacy's willingness to defend us," Cheng added. "Stay alert, Commander. Your position on that ship may become more important than either of us anticipated." After the transmission ended, Anya donned her formal diplomatic uniform, the gleaming silver and blue that most alien species found aesthetically inoffensive. Today's agenda included a routine resource allocation committee meeting, where Earth's requests for advanced defensive systems would once again be placed at the bottom of the schedule, likely to go unaddressed before adjournment. As she walked the sweeping corridors of the Eternal Harmony Anya nodded politely to passing diplomats. The massive Norval representative, Ambassador Thrix, actually paused to acknowledge her, one of the few who consistently did. "Commander Volkov," he rumbled, his four eyes blinking in sequence. "I wanted to express my condolences regarding your colony. Most unfortunate." "Thank you, Ambassador," Anya replied. "Perhaps you might support our petition for emergency defensive aid during today's meeting." Thrix's skin rippled in what Anya had learned was discomfort. The Norval Consortium must maintain neutrality in what appears to be a regional dispute. "However, I shall listen to your presentation with interest." As he lumbered away, Anya maintained her diplomatic smile until he turned the corner. Then her expression hardened. One more dismissal, one more denial of humanity's legitimate security concerns. In her 17 years of service, she had never failed to follow protocol, to speak with perfect diplomacy, to accept the Confederacy's decisions with grace. She had believed in the system, in the possibility of humanity slowly earning respect and equal standing. But standing in that gleaming corridor, surrounded by the architectural grandeur of a civilization that viewed her species as barely worth protecting, something shifted in Commander Anya Volkov's heart. A quiet, cold certainty that Protocol Chimera might not remain dormant much longer. She straightened her uniform and continued toward the meeting chamber, her footsteps nearly silent against the polished floor. Lieutenant Commander Saris, the Confederate monitoring station chief, stared at the anomalous readings with increasing frustration. For the third time this week, the human military vessel Hess Intrepid had vanished from their tracking systems, only to reappear hours later in a slightly different position. According to protocol, he had filed the standard inquiry. And as with the previous instances, the response from Earth's Fleet Command was infuriatingly mundane. Routine maintenance on outdated navigation systems. Our apologies for any inconvenience. "They're lying," Saris muttered to his second-in-command, a tall Malosian with silver-flecked skin. No maintenance requires complete sensor blackout. Perhaps their technology is simply failing, the Melosian suggested. Humans operate with systems several generations behind current Confederate standards. Saris wasn't convinced. He pulled up the tracking logs from the past month, not just for the Intrepid, but for all registered human military vessels. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable. Sequential disappearances, never more than 3 ships at once, always with the same explanation. Run a deep spectrum analysis on the energy signatures from the human vessel just before it vanished, Saris ordered. Minutes later, the results appeared on his screen. "This can't be right," he whispered. The signature showed momentary spikes in quantum fluctuation typically associated with experimental Confederate phase shift technology that humans shouldn't have access to. Saris composed a priority report to Confederate security, then hesitated. His career had been built on methodical adherence to procedure, not alarmist speculation about a minor species. He filed the report under anomalous readings, low priority instead. Commander Volkov stood silently at the diplomatic reception, nursing a glass of blue Centaurian wine she had no intention of drinking. These functions had once been opportunities, chances to build relationships, to advocate for Earth's interests through personal connections. Now, she observed, catalogued, and reported. "Commander, you've been unusually quiet in recent council sessions," said diplomatic overseer Sturl, gliding toward her with characteristic grace. His silver eyes studied her with something approaching genuine concern. "I hope the unfortunate business with your colony hasn't affected your enthusiasm for our joint endeavors." "Not at all, Overseer," Anya replied with a perfectly calibrated smile. "I'm simply focusing on listening rather than speaking. One learns more that way." "Indeed," Sturl said, "though I've noticed your government has been rather communicative lately. Our signals monitoring shows a 300% increase in transmissions between Earth and your outer colonies. Unusual encryption, as well." Anya didn't flinch. After New Montana, there's naturally been increased concern about security. The encryption is simply an updated protocol. The increased communications are primarily cultural exchange programs, music, art, literature, maintaining morale in difficult times. Of course, Sturl's tendrils fluttered in what could have been skepticism. Cultural exchange. How enlightened. As he moved away to greet other dignitaries, Anya's comm unit vibrated against her wrist. The message was brief and encoded for her eyes only. Proxima Haven reports Vrax ships in proximity. Defensive preparations underway. Protocol Chimera status now at alert level 2. Anya drained her glass in a single swallow, the first genuine reaction she had allowed herself all evening. Across the reception hall, Dr. Klexon observed the human commander with academic interest. The subtle shift in her posture, the minute change in her expression, to most species, it would be imperceptible. But Klexon had studied humans for decades. He recognized the signs of a predator preparing to strike. The emergency session of the Galactic Council descended into chaos as the holographic displays showed the devastation across 3 human colonies simultaneously. New Sydney's orbital platform drifted in pieces. Armstrong's Landing's atmospheric dome had catastrophically failed, and Ta Outpost's mining operations had been reduced to molten craters. The Vrax ambassador, Grell Thor, stood impassively as accusations flew across the chamber. "The evidence is irrefutable," declared the Norval representative, Ambassador Thrix. "Vrax energy signatures are present at all 3 attack sites." Grell Thor's scaled face remained expressionless. The Vrax Empire categorically denies involvement in these regrettable incidents. Perhaps the humans' own experimental technologies backfired. We all know they tinker with systems beyond their understanding. From her position at the human delegation's table, Commander Volkov watched the proceedings with unnerving stillness. When the council president finally acknowledged Earth's right to address the chamber, she rose slowly. The room fell silent. Even species normally dismissive of human concerns seemed to sense something had fundamentally changed. For a century, Volkov began, her voice soft yet carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Humanity has respected your protocols. We followed your rules. We trusted your protection. She paused, surveying the assembled representatives. That trust was misplaced. You were warned. Earth will handle this now. She sat down without further elaboration, ignoring the eruption of questions and demands for clarification. Security Officer Dassin reviewed the footage for the 12th time. Commander Volkov had entered her quarters aboard the Eternal Harmony at precisely 22:17 ship time. The door had sealed behind her. No one had entered or exited through the door until security had forced it open at 7:30 the next morning to find the quarters empty. "It's impossible," he muttered. "The ventilation shafts are too small for a human. The walls are solid, and there are no other exits." Yet somehow, Commander Anya Volkov had vanished, along with every human diplomatic officer throughout Confederate space, all within the same 3-hour period. His superior, Chief Security Officer Vran, studied the inventory list. Her personal effects remain: clothing, data terminals, even her identification tags. It's as if she simply ceased to exist. Dassin's communicator chimed with a priority alert. "Sir, we're receiving reports that all communication channels with Earth and human colonies have gone silent. Automated responses only." Vran's expression darkened. "Deploy all available assets to human space immediately. Something is very wrong." Dr. Klexon stood before the hastily assembled Confederate Security Council, his ancient form supported by a hovering mobility chair. The chamber was tense with fear poorly disguised as bureaucratic concern. "You summoned me from retirement to ask what humanity is doing." The old sinoanthropologist's laugh was dry and without humor. "I warned you decades ago. Humans don't think like other species. They build redundancies upon redundancies. They prepare for worst-case scenarios as a cultural imperative." "But what does it mean, this disappearance, this silence?" demanded Counselor Thizak. "It means," Klexon said slowly, "that they've reached what I termed their threshold of tolerance. In human psychological studies, there's a point at which their neural patterns change. They stop seeking compromise. They stop weighing consequences in conventional terms." He looked around the chamber gravely. "No species has documented what happens next, because no intelligent civilization has previously pushed humans beyond this point and survived to record the outcome." Counselor Thizak's voice dropped to a whisper. "What do you recommend we do?" "Pray," said Dr. Klexon simply, "and prepare to witness something unprecedented." The Vrak Central Command Center beneath the capital city of Krail Fox erupted into frenzied activity as the unidentified fleet materialized at the edge of their system. Supreme Commander Ikthar pushed subordinates aside to reach the main tactical display. "Report," he snarled. 37 vessels. Configuration unknown." His tactical officer responded, mandibles clicking nervously. They appeared simultaneously. No hyperspace signature detected. They're not in our database, Supreme Commander." Ekthar studied the approaching ships. Sleek, obsidian hulls with pulsing blue energy matrices, unlike anything in Confederate or Vrak's design. Their formation was unnervingly perfect. Not a single vessel out of alignment by even a fraction of a degree. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Deploy the defense grid. All warriors to battle stations." The main screen flickered, and Ikthar found himself staring at a face he recognized from Confederate diplomatic functions. Commander Anya Volkov, though she now wore a midnight black uniform bearing no insignia except a small blue Earth emblem. "Vrak's vessel, this is Admiral Volkov of the Earth Defense Force. You awakened what should have remained dormant. You will now witness what happens when humanity stops playing by your rules." Ekthar's scales flared in rage. "Your pathetic threats mean nothing, human. Your species lacks the technological capacity to." His words died as alarms blared throughout the command center. Around him, control stations began shutting down. Defense grid monitors went dark, and communication channels fell silent one by one. planetary shield generators offline, reported his second-in-command, panic evident in his voice. Orbital defense platforms are powering down. We're receiving reports of systems failures across the entire fleet. Ekthar slammed his clawed fist into the console. Impossible. Engage emergency protocols. But the emergency systems, too, failed to respond. On the still-functioning main screen, Admiral Volkov watched impassively. "Your systems are now under our control," she stated flatly. "Your weapons are disabled. Your propulsion systems are locked. We control your life support." Her expression remained unnervingly calm. "We could kill every Vrax warrior with a thought. Remember that in the negotiations to come." The screen went dark, leaving the command center in eerie silence, broken only by the sound of backup generators struggling to maintain basic lighting. Aboard the Confederate flagship Unyielding Justice, Fleet Admiral Jeterl watched with growing horror as the situation unfolded. The most powerful battle group in Confederate history had arrived to intervene in what they believed would be a straightforward peacekeeping operation. Instead, they found the mighty Vrax fleet drifting powerless, and a human armada of previously unknown capabilities holding the Vrax homeworld hostage. "Prepare to engage the human vessels," Jeterl ordered. "All weapons systems at ready." His communications officer swiveled toward him. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship." Admiral Volkov's face appeared on the command screen. "Confederate vessel. This is Admiral Volkov. We have no quarrel with you if you do not interfere. However, should you attempt to engage, I will be forced to activate the Pandora Protocol." Jeterl's four eyes narrowed. "Your threats do not concern us, human. The Confederacy will restore order." "Pandora Protocol active," Volkov interrupted calmly. Throughout the Confederate battle group, system failures cascaded in identical patterns to those that had crippled the Vrax fleet. Weapons, shields, engines, and communication arrays shut down simultaneously, leaving the most advanced vessels in the galaxy floating helplessly in space. On the bridge of the Unyielding Justice Admiral Jeterl watched in stunned silence as every system except life support and the main view screen went dark. "What have they done?" he whispered. In the secure analysis chamber deep within the Confederate Intelligence Headquarters on Axiom Prime, Chief Analyst Relvith stared at the microscopic image with a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration. The sample, taken from a standard medical supply pack manufactured on Earth, revealed structures too small to be detected by conventional scanning methods. "Quantum-entangled nanites," he explained to the gathered Security Council members. "Self-replicating, adaptive, and networked across vast distances. They've been integrated into virtually every product exported from human space for the past 27 years. Counselor Fizak's tentacles coiled tightly against his thorax, a sign of extreme distress. "How did we miss this? Our trade inspection protocols are the most rigorous in the galaxy." "Because they designed them to be missed," Relvith said simply. "Each individual nanite appears to be an inert carbon structure when dormant. Our scanning systems categorized them as harmless manufacturing residue. It was only when they activated that their true nature became apparent." He manipulated the holographic display to show a time-lapse of the nanites transitioning from dormant to active state. "The elegance is remarkable. They don't attack our technologies. They interface with them. The nanites map systems, identify critical junctions, and selectively disable or control them with minimal energy expenditure." "How widespread is the contamination?" another counselor asked, voice barely audible. Relvith's four eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of extreme discomfort. "Our preliminary assessment suggests that approximately 82% of all Confederate technology contains these nanites. Higher concentrations exist in military and transportation infrastructure." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. "They turned our own civilization into their weapon," Counselor Thizak finally said. "While we dismissed them as primitive, they were quietly ensuring they could shut us down at will." Admiral Volkov stood on the bridge of her flagship, the *Defiance*, watching the holographic display of the Vrax throne world. Behind her, a team of human technicians monitored the nanite network status across 3 sectors of space. "Admiral," her executive officer reported, "the Confederate Council is requesting a direct communication channel." Volkov nodded. On screen, the stern face of High Counselor Thurl appeared, his customary diplomatic polish replaced by barely contained fury. "Admiral Volkov, the Confederacy demands an immediate explanation for this unprovoked act of aggression against member worlds." Volkov raised an eyebrow. "Unprovoked. 3 human colonies lie in ruins. 2 million of my people are dead. Your council was presented with clear evidence of Vrax aggression and chose to do nothing. The appropriate diplomatic channels failed," Volkov interrupted, "as they were designed to fail. The Confederacy has never viewed humanity as equals. You tolerated us as a minor trading partner while denying us the means to protect ourselves." Her voice remained calm, almost conversational. "So we created our own means." Thurl's expression shifted subtly. "The nanite network. How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day we joined your Confederacy," Volkov replied. "We studied your histories. We saw how the Confederacy treated species it deemed primitive. We understood that we would never be granted true security within your system." She touched a control panel, splitting the screen to display a star map. "To demonstrate the extent of our capabilities, I will now temporarily disable all transportation and communication systems in sectors 7 through 9. With a simple gesture, she activated the command. Across 3 vast sectors of Confederate space, ships lost power, communication relays went silent, and orbital platforms drifted off course, only to have all systems restore precisely 2 minutes later. "This is what happens when humanity stops playing by your rules," Volkov stated. "Now shall we discuss new ones?" The Vrax Imperial Surrender document hovered in holographic form before Supreme Commander Ikthar. His clawed hand trembled slightly as he pressed his genetic signature to the glowing panel, formalizing the most humiliating defeat in his species' 10,000-year history. Across the table, Admiral Volkov made no show of triumph. Her face remained impassive as the document was transmitted simultaneously to Earth, the Confederate Council, and every major news network across known space. "The terms are fair," she stated. "Withdrawal from all contested territories, release of prisoners, and reparations for the colonies destroyed. The nanite control systems will remain in your critical infrastructure for 5 years to ensure compliance." Ikthar's scales flattened against his skull, a sign of suppressed rage. "You've destroyed a civilization that stood for millennia before your kind crawled from the oceans." "No," Volkov corrected, "we've stopped you from destroying others. There's a difference." She rose from her seat. "Your empire isn't destroyed, Commander. It's constrained." As the Vrax delegation was escorted from the chamber, Volkov's second-in-command approached. "Admiral, we're receiving requests for meetings from 17 previously minor Confederate species. They're seeking alliances." "Arrange the meetings," Volkov nodded. "Priority to those who offered aid after the colony attacks, however limited their means." In the newly established Emergency Council chamber on the Confederate capital world, the mood was tense as Admiral Volkov's evidence played across the massive displays. Financial transactions, classified communications, and military orders scrolled past, all documenting the complicity of high-ranking Confederate officials in facilitating the Vrax aggression. Council Chair Drevnak received 60 million credits from Vrax mining interests 2 days before vetoing increased security for New Montana, Volkov narrated calmly. Fleet Commander Shatal diverted patrol vessels away from Proxima Haven, despite intelligence warnings. Diplomatic Overseer Thurl personally assured the Vrax ambassador that Confederate intervention would be minimal and delayed if certain colonies were targeted. The accused officials sat in stunned silence as decades of corruption were methodically exposed. The representatives from previously marginalized species watched with growing anger as they realized how thoroughly the system had been manipulated against them. This evidence was gathered by the nanite network over 20 years, Volkov explained. While its primary function was defensive, it also served as the most sophisticated intelligence-gathering system ever deployed. A Talarian representative, her crystalline form glittering with agitation, rose to address Volkov. Your species has broken dozens of Confederate laws in creating and deploying this technology. By your own admission, you've engaged in unauthorized surveillance of sovereign governments. Yes, Volkov acknowledged without hesitation. We broke your laws to survive your corruption. The Confederacy gave us no legitimate path to security, so we created our own. She surveyed the chamber. Humanity joined your Confederacy in good faith. We sought peaceful cooperation. Instead, we found a system where power dictated justice. From the back of the chamber, Dr. Klexin watched with scientific fascination. The xenanthropologist had theorized about the human capacity for long-term strategic planning, but even he had underestimated the depth of their preparation. They adapted, he murmured to his colleague, not biologically, but culturally. When faced with a hostile system they couldn't overcome through conventional means, they created unconventional ones. His colleague's luminescent appendages dimmed with concern. And what happens when a species that can turn an entire galactic civilization into a weapon decides we are the threat? Dr. Klexin had no answer. 6 months after what galactic historians now called the Awakening, the newly reformed Galactic Council convened in a chamber that symbolized the transformed order. Gone was the hierarchical arrangement that had placed ancient species on elevated platforms. Now representatives sat in a perfect circle, their positions determined by lottery rather than status. Admiral Volkov, now serving as Earth's High Representative, listened as the Talarian delegation presented findings on the implementation of human medical nanite technology for crystal-based life forms. What had once been closely guarded human secrets were now being adapted to benefit species across the Confederacy. The mortality rate for crystalline fracture syndrome has decreased by 73%. The Talarian representative concluded, her facets glowing with genuine enthusiasm. We propose expanding the program to the outer colonies immediately. Volkov nodded approval, making a note to inform Earth's medical division. The sharing of previously secret human technologies had been a calculated decision, building interdependence rather than dependence or dominance. After the session, she was approached by Ambassador Thrix of the Norval, one of the few higher-tier species who had maintained their council position. An impressive transformation, High Representative, Thrix rumbled, his 4 eyes blinking in their characteristic sequence. Though some wonder if it was necessary to reveal quite so much of your species' capabilities all at once, it has unsettled many. That was precisely the point, Ambassador, Volkov replied. Humanity spent a century being underestimated. We won't make that mistake again. In the observation gallery above the council chamber, Dr. Klexin watched the proceedings with academic interest. Beside him stood his most promising student, a young Vrax anthropologist whose scales still bore the blue tint of youth. You predicted much of this, the student noted. Your paper on human psychological adaptation to existential threats is now required reading at the Imperial Academy. Klexin gestured toward the chamber floor where representatives from 12 formerly minor species were presenting a joint defense initiative. What I failed to predict was how humanity would use their power once revealed. They could have established dominance. Instead, they've created a system of mutual accountability. Is it truly mutual? The student asked skeptically. The nanite network remains under human control. Partially, Klexin corrected. Observe their strategy. Each technology they reveal comes with shared control protocols. The defensive grid now operates under oversight from 5 different species. The medical technologies require cross-species certification. He pointed to Volkov, now deep in conversation with representatives from 3 different worlds. They're systematically making themselves essential rather than feared. It's a strategy for long-term stability rather than short-term control. The young Vrax's inner eyelids flicked thoughtfully. The old masters at the Imperial Academy still speak of reclaiming our former glory. They see this as temporary humiliation. Then they've learned nothing, Klexin said flatly. Humanity didn't just defeat the Vrax Empire or expose Confederate corruption. They demonstrated a fundamental truth that the galaxy had forgotten. Adaptation outperforms tradition when survival is at stake. He gestured toward the human delegation. Look closely. They're not acting like conquerors celebrating victory. They're acting like survivors who never want to be threatened again. The distinction is crucial. Below them, the Council moved to its next agenda item. The trial of former Confederate officials whose corruption had enabled the Vrax attacks on human colonies. Justice would be public, transparent, and meticulously documented. Another lesson humanity was teaching the galaxy. 5 years to the day after the Vrax surrender, a vast crowd gathered in orbit above Earth. The memorial station, named *Remembrance*, rotated slowly, its tree-like structure extending crystalline branches toward the stars. Each branch pointed toward one of the lost colonies, with bioluminescent markers bearing the names of every confirmed casualty. Supreme Commander Volkov, now head of the Galactic Defense Force, stood on the observation platform. Her dress uniform was no longer the midnight black of Earth's hidden fleet, but the silver and blue that incorporated elements from all member species of the new alliance. We gather today not only to remember what was lost, she began, her voice carrying to the assembled dignitaries and families of the victims, but to acknowledge what has been built from that loss. Around her stood representatives from every major civilization, including a delegation from the reformed Vrax Cooperative. Their new leader, Subarchian Klovex, had once been a minor colonial administrator who had warned against attacking human settlements, warnings that the previous regime had ignored. 5 years ago, humanity demonstrated that even the most seemingly powerless species can become formidable when pushed beyond endurance, Volkov continued. But the true test of power is not in how it is seized, but in how it is wielded afterward. She gestured to the display, showing the status of the nanite network, now substantially decommissioned except for critical peacekeeping functions. The remaining network operated under the supervision of a 12-species oversight committee with rotating membership. Power without restraint becomes tyranny. Restraint without power becomes victimhood. Today we honor those whose sacrifice taught us the cost of both extremes, and we commit to holding the balance between them. As she concluded her address, representatives from each civilization approached the central memorial chamber, placing symbolic objects within alcoves designed for the purpose. The Vrax delegation's offering, a shattered imperial seal remade into a sculpture of connected hands, drew particular attention for its symbolism of transformation. Dr. Klexin, now well into his final life cycle, observed the proceedings from his private viewing chamber. His colleague, Dr. Thazan of the Malosian Academy, watched the ceremony with analytical interest. The turnout is remarkable, Thazan noted. Even species that initially opposed the restructuring of the Confederacy have sent their highest representatives. Self-interest, Klexin remarked. The new trade agreements and technology sharing have created prosperity that transcends old rivalries. Is that cynicism I detect? Thazan asked, surprised. Klexin's aging eyes crinkled with amusement. Realism, but that doesn't diminish the achievement. He gestured toward Volkov as she conversed with delegates from a dozen different worlds. The most remarkable thing is not what humans did when they snapped, it was what they refrained from doing. They could have dominated us all. Instead, they'd rebuilt something better. Thazan's luminescent appendages pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps that is the final lesson. When pushed beyond endurance, most species seek vengeance. Humans sought justice. As the ceremony concluded, ships from across the galaxy formed a protective formation around Earth, not by treaty obligation, but by choice. The human homeworld, once considered an insignificant backwater, now stood as the moral center of a transformed galactic community. And on monitoring stations throughout known space, the quantum signature of the remaining nanite network pulsed quietly, dormant but vigilant, a reminder of what happens when humans snap and how they choose to use that terrible power once awakened.